What's going on, everybody? We're live this morning.
Hey.
Different time, a little bit different. 10 a.m. Central. We are 7 minutes late because we are. It's Jake's fault, but it's fine. But we have a guest today. I'm super excited about. Don Jones is joining us from Pluralsight. Don, thanks again for joining, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Where are you located? I missed that.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
I'm actually in Las Vegas. The company's based in the Salt Lake City area.
Okay, cool.
There's so much tech in Salt Lake, right? There's a ton of tech in Salt Lake.
Yeah. Nuts.
So, Don, as people are trickling in, just give a quick bio about yourself, 30 seconds to about 30 minutes. Don't give a 30-minute exhausting. Give a 30-second, 60-second bio about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been in the tech industry since probably the late 1990s, and I've been through all sorts of jobs: software developer, systems engineer, network engineer, blah 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 blah. And I'm currently head of developer skills at Pluralsight. So my job is to make sure our library contains education on the skills that developers need, both to get a job and to keep a job, especially in the enterprise space.
That's awesome.
So Don, what does that mean, right? I mean, obviously, the job title does a pretty good job describing what that means, but what does kind of your day-to-day consist of?
Yeah, it's a lot of talking to customers, a lot of market analysis, a lot of we spend a lot of time looking at job descriptions. We spend a lot of time looking at what's popular in code repositories. Really just taking a ton of different input. We'll look at the occasional analyst research just to understand what technologies are moving and how quick they're moving. And it's not only what topics do we include, but how deeply do we cover them. Some things you can get away with just kind of a core skill path. But other stuff, Java, JavaScript, C#, Python, the biggies, you really got to go deep. You've got to have a core skill path, and then that's got to be backed up by a lot of additional education. So as people kind of get into it at work and they start diving into individual bits, they've got something they can lean on to learn those skills.
So do you end up finding more in? Oh, sorry, bud. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask you. Go ahead, Jake. That's fine.
Do you end up finding more individuals seeking out your services, or you had mentioned you were talking to a lot of companies? So is it hey, we do training our whole team's trying to learn full stack JavaScript right now.
Yeah.
What does that work?
Yeah, we do a lot of B2B. That's probably the biggest portion of our business. Now look, the upside to the B2C market, the individual, is that we've started to really tailor the library for what enterprises are looking for. So if that's who you want to work for, then we've got the right training. But yeah, so you'll get some organizations who are engaging on a new project and they need to upskill a team or maybe reskill a team. There's a lot of companies now that are taking on a new approach called insourcing. And rather than, because it's so difficult sometimes, especially in software development, to really fill out a project team, they're going to their non-technical adjacencies, business analysts, project managers, and saying, hey, would you be interested in becoming a software engineer? And we're going to provide the training and the program and everything else and get you to an entry level. And some of these companies have gotten really good at it. Yeah, well, like they know, okay, when we want to do this new product, this new thing we're going to ship out, they know how to backtrace how long it's going to take to get the right people skilled up, and they just build that kind of all into the plan. Like some of them are really, really good at it.
That's interesting. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense when you think about when you say it so simplistically as you just did. But why not? You have people already understand your product, your culture, your teammates, and it's a great way to invest in your people.
It is. It's hard. Like it's easy to describe, but those programs are incredibly hard to put together. But if you can invest in it, think about what that looks like to the bottom of your pipeline too. Like more people want to work for the company because they see upward mobility. There's a couple of customers that they've almost, at least for lower level entry jobs, they're funding their pipeline entirely from high school kids. They're like recruiting out of high schools and saying, don't go to college. You don't need to. We got you, come work for us. We'll get you through this program. And then, as an employee, if you have a good experience through that, you're going to stick with that company for a long time and you're going to become a senior engineer or director or whatever else, right?
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. What those programs look like? If I were to be like, hey, I want to hire a bunch, because this is something that we are working on in our team. We've done this kind of bolt-on training, or if one of our lead engineers is consulting at your company, we'll hire a junior candidate, but you get to keep the junior candidate. They convert at the end of the project, right?
Yeah.
This kind of mentee thing. That's a great way for us to also get diversity candidates in who haven't had the opportunity for training ahead of time, right? And so we've been helping companies in that manner. If I were to go to you and say, hey, we want to build an internal training program with a cohort of 15 people, what do you need from us? Like, what's kind of the first steps? And I know I'm kind of Shanghaiing the combo on that. I'm so interested.
There's a lot of consulting that goes into it up front. We made a recent acquisition of a company called Develop Intelligence, which does a lot of ILT and VILT, and they tend to lead out on those engagements. They've done those types of things. They've worked with a lot of customers. So there's a lot of consultation, a lot of understanding what the business outcomes need to be, and really creating something that gets to those business outcomes.
That's awesome.
Don, I want to go back to your job a little bit more. I want to talk about building programs, building lesson plans, building what you guys are building out here. How do you guys initially sit down and whiteboard, and then how do you guys make sure that the technology you guys are using is kind of top of the latest and greatest of what's happening in the enterprise right now?
Yeah. So surprisingly, the latest and greatest in enterprises is rarely the latest and greatest in the industry, right? Enterprises tend to be a little bit more thoughtful movers. So we have a pretty formal process for creating a curriculum. Part of my team is a group of curriculum designers, and they sit down. They will do a job task analysis to really understand, okay, for Java, what is it that people actually do on the job? What's important? What's critical? What do you maybe not do that often, but when you do it, it's like hugely bad if you do it wrong, like all those things. And that tells us what job tasks we have to teach, how we have to dive into those. And then we start engaging our author community. We've got, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of independent experts who actually work in the business, who then take those job tasks and put together the actual training process. We've just launched hands-on training. So that's part of it. So now you can watch a video, and then you can jump right into a sandbox with the same exercise files all preloaded, and you can do exactly what the trainer just did to kind of validate. So that's available on a lot of our enterprise plans, or can be added to any plan.
That's really cool. It's interesting because some of the, for lack of a better phrase, complaints about recent graduates, if they graduate with a comp sci degree, is that they'll understand fundamentals, but not how to use them. Or even worse, they don't know how to play with others yet, how to run in a project, how to get requirements, and what that even looks like.
Yeah, we actually do
it's huge.
We do a lot of that soft skills training too. We do a lot of communications. We do a lot of working on a team. We do a lot of emotional intelligence and just those things that we find that a lot of companies, as you move from a level 1 engineer to a level 2 to level 3, the big criteria that companies are looking at are not so much your tech skills as they are those soft skills. I just actually finished writing a book for Manning Books on soft skills, so that it's so critical to anyone's career. You can be the most amazing tech person in the world, and you can still not achieve your career goals if you don't have all that human squishy stuff that goes around it.
So what does it look, Don? Let me ask you this. Let's talk about that real. I'm sorry if I'm lying here. Wi-Fi is a little weird at my house, but so let's kind of dive into that about career trajectory and whatnot. I mean, there's some advice that you would give individuals who are starting their career and going through their career right now, because the individuals who are watching the show at the moment are new in their career, senior in their career, growing within their career. And so as somebody who is the head of obviously all these skills, there's some advice, some tangible things that individuals can take away from
I would say avoid being a passenger in your career. And what I mean by that is when we start out in primary school, we start engaging in this series of successive promotions, right? You go from a junior to a senior and you graduate, and you go to college and you're a freshman. So, and then you get into the workplace and you're a junior engineer, and then all you want is that promotion. Very few of us reel it back and ask why. Like, what is this getting me? And I think that the attitude everyone needs to have is that your career is there to get you a job, and the job is there to fund the life that you need to live. And you need to start by sitting down and deciding what that is. Where do you want to live? What kind of house do you want to live in? What kind of vacations do you want to take? What kind of family do you want? What's that cost? How much time does it need? Like, you can't just put 80 hours a week into the job. Once you decide what you want out of life, that is your success. And when you have a job that is providing for that success, you're done. You won the game. You can exit the rat race. Now, you're going to get older, maybe you meet someone, get married, decide to start a family. What you want is going to change, and you might need a different type of job, maybe that offers more time and maybe not as much money, right? And that's the first chapter in that book, actually, is I think too many of us just get into this promotion, title, salary cycle, and that's super, super unhealthy. You really have to decide why you're doing all of that, and then craft a career that will take you there, and it doesn't need to take you any further than there.
Yeah. John, what a recipe for content life.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is I run across a lot of folks who are very excited about technology, right? That's why a lot of us got into the field. And they'll get bummed out that their current boss or their current job isn't using the latest and greatest. And there's a difference between your job and your career. Your boss owns your job. They pay for that. They pay you to do a service for them for that job. They really need to give you the tools and whatever you need to do that job, and honestly, no more. Past that, they're not responsible. You own your career, and your career, if you feed it well and take care of it, your career will get you that next job. But you need to expect to invest in that on your own. Don't expect your boss to send you to training for stuff that they don't need. Expect to spend that time on your own. Expect to spend a little bit of money on your own. Like, that needs to be part of your budget. You take care of your career, and your career will take care of you, but it's not the same as your job.
Don, I want to ask you a question. We're talking about the concept of career, and for a long time, you've talked about going from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and a lot of times the way that we've talked about getting into a career now has been high school, either the military or college, and then from there you get into the workforce. Obviously, that's changing drastically. You mentioned going after high schoolers in particular. I know that there's a lot of these coding schools, and there's a lot of government initiatives and local initiatives to get folks into tech, into other industries. How do you guys combat some of the inherent kind of bias in nature, where somebody doesn't have maybe that computer science degree, but they are skilled enough to jump into tech right away? And how are you guys at Pluralsight trying to solve that problem?
Yeah, I think more and more companies are seeing that just randomly asking for a 4-year degree is kind of pointless, especially in the tech space. You can get a lot of extremely well-qualified people without it. I'm super anti-college. I didn't go to college. I'm probably more anti-college than I need to be, but it just comes from seeing job descriptions like, oh, this is an entry-level project coordinator job and it requires a 4-year degree. What the, like why? Like, just any 4-year degree, phys ed is fine with you. You just don't care. It's this history. Pointless thing that we started tacking on, right? Literature. So I think one of the things we're doing is our mission at Pluralsight is to democratize technology skills. We believe that tech skills are one of the very few things on this planet that pay really well, let you work from damn near anywhere, and that anyone can do. Like, you don't need a college degree to learn what programming is. We've hundreds of thousands of examples of people who don't have them and are doing very, very well in the industry. And so by making the product inexpensive for people, making it very affordable for enterprises and businesses, anybody can get in. And especially so right now, we've unlocked the entire platform for free for all of April. Like, all of our video training, all of our skill IQ assessments, all of our interactive training, all of our projects, like all of these things are free. Anybody
so they
can
don't have to
in.
use hashtag unicorn finders to unlock that. It just happens.
No, and you don't. It's not a trial either.
Unicorn finders code.
You don't even have to provide a form of payment. I mean, it's not like we're not trying to hook you for later. We believe that the way the world moves forward is by more people getting into the workplace without taking the most vulnerable segment of our population and saddling them with tens of thousands of dollars of student debt. Right? Like you can get off your feet and do this. And everybody at the company feels really, really strongly about it. And we really line up around that concept pretty much every day.
So Don, I'm fascinated with this, right? So I went to college. My wife went to college. You know, we talked about the purpose of college and where we're going to be in 10 years, 15 years, right? I'm very passionate, and I get a ton of questions. Code school, BS degree, Bachelor's of Science, not.
Don might say an actual BS degree.
So I'm curious, Don. I mean, so if someone's watching this right now, like, Don, like, I get it, like, no college, that's fine, but like, how can I get rolling in software? I obviously preach some things on my end, but I'm curious to hear you. So if somebody's evaluating going to college, code school, like, what are your thoughts about how somebody can get started and really become self-made?
I think if you're looking at a career college that's teaching coding, and you're extremely careful and you're maybe focused on the nonprofits that are a little bit more right thinking, I think that can be a good accelerant, right? And we're talking like 16-week programs, not 4-year programs, right?
Sure.
You can get started, but there's a lot more to it. Like, if I think about what a hiring manager is looking at, and you guys know this from what you do, hiring is the most stressful thing a manager does. Zero tech managers enjoy it, right? Because you're rolling these dice and you're making this huge bet and you've got no data. And so what we all do is we try to seek out data. I want to see what you've been doing in the open source community. I want to see you contributing to something. I want to see what your code looks like. I want to see how you behave in a team. That costs you nothing. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of open source projects that would welcome a positive contribution. I want to see that you're going in and answering questions in Q&A forums like Stack Overflow or whatever. And a new person will say, well, yeah, but I'm new. I don't have anything to offer. Yeah, but you're not as new as someone who's 5 years younger than you. So go look for them and help them. Like, there's a birth rate, right? There's always new people coming in. Go look for them. Don't try to impress the people above you. Try to help the people below you. And you start to create that public resume that I am a useful person. Like, I can do this sort of stuff. And that ultimately is worth far more than the proxy of just saying, oh, a 4-year degree. And while there are a lot of companies that will not look for that, they won't accept that, they still want that 4-year degree, I think you need to ask yourself if that's who you want to work for or not.
Ooh, here we go.
Like, if a company is still in that firm mindset, maybe they don't deserve nice things.
Don, I love that. I love that. So obviously you mentioned hiring is something that a lot of tech managers hate, but it's also something that they're usually really bad at, right? Like, I talk to people all the time. They're like, you have to think a director of software development hiring, yes, is an important part of his role, but it's like 2% of his job responsibility. And for the most part, it's like, I'll deal with it when I get there. Do you guys offer anything, or what is some advice that you can give to hiring managers about how to talk and engage in conversations that could potentially create better yield for hiring software developers?
Yeah, we actually do have a couple of courses. We have an author in the platform, Jason Alba, who produces some just like bonkers good soft skills stuff. Like, you can basically just watch everything he's ever done, and it's career, it's job interview from both sides of the desk, right? Really, really good guy, really easy to listen to, really professional. But, I think the idea, one of the reasons that a lot of hiring managers get so stressed out about it is because they feel they're rolling the dice and they're making this one-time bet, and if they screw it up, they're hosed, right? Like you can't just get rid of someone. And part of the difficulty there is that we do not treat learning as something that we lead to. We can lead to a stand-up meeting, we can lead to production outcomes.
So good.
But we don't treat learning that way. And because we don't treat learning as a production outcome, it means when we have someone who needs learning, we don't have any confidence in our ability to do it. And I think that's what tech leaders need to fix. Is if you can become confident in leading to learning, then if you get someone who maybe just needs some skill up, you got it. Like, it's no big deal, And if then you can take someone and you can make a bet on someone, you can go, you know what? I'm going to hire that person because they're going to bring a different perspective to my team, and I value that. And I'm not 1,000% on their tech skills, but I got that. I know how to skill them up then. Just like, think about what that unlocks for you as a hiring manager and the stress it takes off of you if you don't have to worry about them passing the code interview.
And you can build such a good community in your team because you can bring in different personalities and different walks of life.
And lots of different perspectives and everything else. And you can bring in the people who are going to bring the difficult stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're a web shop and you really focus on front-end web development and you don't have a person on your dev team who is blind or low sight, then you miss that perspective. And that's a hugely important perspective. And you're thinking, well, yeah, but how do I know they can code? If you can lead to learning, you don't need to worry about that. You can go for the hard thing, and then you can create the skill you need.
Don just dropping some bombs this morning.
That's so good, because we talk about this when we're trying to train as well, is that I think companies have a plan to hire diversely or a plan to train, but the problem is that plan of training and pouring into their team is not reflected in their development plan or their project delivery plan, to where they leave margin, or they architect it properly to know, hey, 10 hours a week of this is not going to be pumping out code for the next 4 sprints. It's going to be getting this person up to speed so that we can do this later. And it all comes from setting that expectations with your stakeholders and setting expectations with your team.
I think a big thing too, like you hear all the time, like all companies are tech companies, right? That's been a refrain for a few years now. All companies have to master tech. And we all get that. We all know where that comes from. But there's a piece of that I think a lot of folks don't say. And if you're going to be a tech company, then you have to be a learning company, because tech is never going to stand still. And the only way you can succeed as a tech company is to be able to confidently build exactly the skills you need when you need them. You can't just turn around every single day and go, oh, we need this new skill, let's go hire for it. Like it's not sustainable. You need to be able to build skills. And so if you can be a learning company, then you can start focusing on all these other things you also want.
That's so good. So good. And it allows you to be innovative. If you have that mindset of learning, you're going to have that mindset of innovation naturally. So carry on.
Jason asked this question to Don. Don, if you had employees from boot camps, how have those compared to those in college? Any experience here?
I personally have at other jobs, and I know that we have explicitly brought people in. So we run internships and apprenticeships paid within Pluralsight, awesome. And there's a pretty high placement rate for people who choose to stay at the end of the program, and they compare extremely favorably. They've got a lot of the same skills. Now, look, there are certain skills, right? Doctor, lawyer, data scientist that require a ton of education that tends to only be available from academia. If you're going to be a psychometrician, that's basically it's a dual degree in statistics and psychology, and you use them to develop things like skill assessments as part of our Skill IQ product. That's a college hire. Totally get it. But when you're talking to a software engineer, we've got tons of people. We've got a ton of people in the company who went to like Western Governors University, which has a really, really kind of innovative approach to the idea of college, where you can more or less test out of classes and only take the ones you need. And you can get through a 4-year degree with $30,000, $40,000, not $200,000, right? So there's right-sized college as well for certain roles. But yeah, I mean, we see people performing well all the time.
Yeah, I would prefer my medical doctor to go to college. But other than
same. So let me ask you this, Don, from a skill set perspective, what should people be either reading about, studying about, looking towards? I have thoughts, but obviously you're more important than me. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I would say make sure you're really, 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 really good in JavaScript if you're a software developer. And that's not just because 600 of the world's 1,200 programming languages are JavaScript. It's because JavaScript sits at the center of something. And if you're really good at that, moving on to C# is easy. Moving on to Java is easy. Moving on to Python is pretty easy, like once you pick up the syntactical differences. But if you're really looking to future-proof a tech career, like the single piece of advice that I can give someone that will last for 50 years, when JavaScript is long dead and Oracle has bought Microsoft or whatever, other hell on earth is ahead of us, is drop this idea of being a lifelong learner, because there's no accountability to that phrase. Be a daily learner. Learn something every day. Even if that's hopping on Wikipedia and hitting the random article link and just following the rabbit hole of links for half an hour. Cognitively, the way the human brain works, learning is something it gets better at as you do it more. Just like going to the gym and lifting weights. If you do it, you get better at it. So even though you might not be learning something useful every single day, The act of learning will get your brain in shape so that when you need to learn whatever today's new tech is, it's no big deal. You're going to jump right in.
Those
your
neural
brain's
pathways.
going to, yeah, you're going to train your brain to synthesize information more. And if you do it, honest to God, every single day. So I send out a tweet on my stream at Concentrated Dawn every morning at 8 o'clock Pacific. And it's a Wikipedia article I picked. And it's just for folks who are like, you know what? I click that. Read that. Don't even read the whole thing. If there's a link in it that interests you, follow that. Let your brain have a little free play time, and then don't do that for the rest of the day. Just go about your job. Let your brain sleep on that. And honestly, in two or 3 months of doing that, you will have markedly better ability to synthesize new information than you did beforehand. And you will become a daily learner, and that will prepare you for whatever the tech industry throws at you.
Don, I have a follow-up question to that. We run into a lot of companies that are just so focused on these agile sprints and getting things done in 2 weeks, right? And then it's the next 2 week sprint, or we're hiring somebody because we need something done in 6 months. How do we convince companies to carve out time for learning, right? And obviously, we need to be learning outside of work. There's other commitments, things of that nature. How do we convince companies that taking even 5 or 8% of their time a week or a month is focused towards learning? How do we convince companies that do that, say, Don, I have a deadline that if we don't meet it by next Friday, our company is going to go under?
Yeah. You got to look a little bit ahead. You got to, agile sprints aren't just 2 weeks. You're planning out, you've got a North Star that you're heading toward. What about the next deadline? What about the deadline after that? That's going to require a slightly different skill. Can you afford to pause completely and take everyone offline to send them all to a class for a week? Because we know that the outcomes on those are just not great. Like, you don't actually synthesize and retain much. If you can make learning part of the sprint, if you can make it part of life, then the next time the industry pivots and you're in a fire drill and you need to do something, your team will be ready for you. You will be able to pivot. That's why you can't just be a tech company. You have to be a learning company, or you're going to be in the position that a lot of these large companies are. Think about your large banks, your large retailers. They're desperate to find COBOL programmers because their COBOL programmers are literally dying.
Yeah.
And no one has created a learning pattern around this, right?
There's this thing at Fidelity. They call it the COBOL 5. And it's like the last 5 people that keep Fidelity alive. Like everything is running off of it. And they make like $800,000 a year each. And like, they just try to prop them up,
and they're like 76.
Yeah.
So
they're still using MapQuest to get to interviews. We have a few clients here in Nashville. Yeah, printed. And every time I meet a COBOL pre-COVID, they would come in with their MapQuest printed out. I don't know. It's just, I totally agree with that. And Don, I think you make a point, and I stress this too, but I think it's sales driven development is, like I say, SDD, a little SDD within dev organizations, where I think everybody's so focused at iterating with what the salespeople want and so driven to making revenue, which I totally get. But what I have noticed, the better dev shops take the time to train. Take the afternoon to train. There's one specific dev shop in Nashville. I'll give them a shout out, Evacor. They are literally building a culture where they, I think, allow half-day Fridays or a full day to learn, just to learn, to experiment, to read. And I will tell you what, they have taken the best talent in the market. They have retained the best talent in the market, and people rave about them, right? And so
and they will have the ability when they need to pivot, because they'll have people who are not only smart but capable of becoming even smarter.
But why do you think companies don't do that? Why is it
short-sighted? Yeah, it's just short-sightedness. It's the focused on today and not 2 weeks from now. A lot of that can happen if your leadership is not providing you a solid 4-year vision. Like, if you don't have a North Star, if you're just marching to this week's deliverable and you're not marching to a destination. Like, think about if you jumped in your car and you said, okay, I want to drive to Walt Disney World in Florida. I'm in Virginia. I'm just going to punch in an address down the road. Okay. And when I get there, I'm going to punch in another address down the road. You're never going to get to Disney World. But if you've got the destination, you might have to detour for traffic or whatever else, but you've still focused on that. So you need vision. And if you've got vision, learning can become part of that.
some of the issues, I think some leaders that would otherwise be good leaders is stakeholders that are nosy. And that what I mean by is actual stakeholders in the company, stockholders. Sorry, and having them say, "All right, well, I don't care about what's happening 4 years from now. What's this quarter look like for me?" Right? Because I want to sell in this quarter and change this quarter.
The macroeconomics of the world we live in makes that happen. And look, it's not shareholders, right? It's impossible to have a balanced portfolio right now. Your savings account isn't really, it's just another checking account. The bond market returns nothing. And so when everybody needs to dump all of their money into the stock market to make more money, they get intensely curious about what their investments are doing. And so it's the whole macroeconomic situation is what creates that downward pressure. Companies need to get their shareholders to invest in a vision, not today. Manage quarter by quarter, but march to 4 years from now.
God,
Don, I want to talk about Pluralsight. Obviously, your company went on your website. You have a bot that alerts me right away about what I need help with. But assuming that bot is maybe a little overwhelming for me, what's the best way for somebody that has no experience to get started? And then what's the best way for somebody that maybe is an all-around tech guru that's wants to learn something else to navigate your offerings to upscale themselves?
Yeah, I would say if you're new, go to our paths page. Look for something in JavaScript or Java, whatever's caught your interest, front-end web development, and start with the path. Those are curated experiences. It's a whole journey. You can take the skill IQ assessment beforehand. Those are about 25 questions. You're the only one who can see your score. Even if you're on a business plan, only you see your numeric score. Your boss can only see which percentile, which quartile you placed into. If you've been around for a while, our executive briefing series is the hidden gem. You have to use search to really find them all, but if you type in executive briefing, they'll all pop up kind of in roughly most recently published order. They're around half an hour. They're high level, and they're just designed to orient you around a particular technology area, whether it be blockchain or enterprise architecture or microservices or whatever. Whether they interest you or not, just start watching through them all. We have a ton of people who actually will download them to our mobile app and listen to them on, at the gym or on the commute when we still had those, and treat them like a podcast almost. It's just a great way to keep your mind kind of up to speed with what the rest of the industry is doing. And it's a great reason to jump in every week or two and pick up something new, keep the brain exercised, make sure you're kind of in. And they're not newsy, they're not news analysis. It's intended to just orient you at a high level around a bit of technology that maybe you're not personally working in right now, but like you never know what's in the future.
Don, as we wrap up here, my question, one of my last questions is if you were to brag on Pluralsight, right? So people watching this are like, it's great. Like Pluralsight, I've heard of them. Great. Why, what would you say, people watching right now, and I have people tweeting at me about our conversation and whatnot. Why would you say Pluralsight over everything else?
A couple of reasons. One, we curate what goes into the library. It's not YouTube. We are stupidly selective about the authors that we work with. They are the best of the best. They're brilliant. They care. They get a huge charge knowing that they're helping people skill up and do better for themselves in life. They're deeply, deeply invested. So, the fact that it's curated, the fact that our authors just freaking care so much. They're not just there to make a buck, a lot of them, quite honestly. It's huge. It doesn't really come across, but if you dive into the discussion tab on some of our courses and you see the authors coming back and answering questions, you start to see that there's a human being on the other side of that, not just a voice, and they legitimately do care. We have some of our authors that around the holidays every year will, out of their own money, buy Pluralsight gift subscriptions for people they've run across who are maybe having a tough time, and just a free year of Pluralsight will help them get over the edge and make the difference and get a job. They just care that much. So it's a big reason. It's super curated. You don't have to worry about, okay, is this the Angular course I should watch? There's only the one. It's the only one, and it's the right one. We've made sure that what's there is the right stuff for you.
That's awesome. Well, Don, thanks again for coming on. For those of you who are still watching, we have merch. You can't really see it, but Jake and I are currently wearing the shirts. So we have shirts. So feel free to, Don, we will send you a code so you can rep some unicorn stuff.
Awesome.
But again, y'all, thanks for tuning in. Don, thank you. This was awesome. One thing that we're wanting to do with Unicorn Finders is to develop community, foster community, and get all of our speakers together for bigger panels. So those are coming. So we'd love to have you back on with
happy to.
A panel of software engineers that we have brought on from Netflix and Spotify and Google. And so
that would be fun.
We'd love to have you on with that. So again, thank you for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have
great
a great rest of the week,
man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Don. Have a good one, buddy.
Thanks,
too.
Don.